Cozy Beats.
Knowing that you went through the trial process,
Yeah.
and now we zoomed by and we're here at the end of March, what was something that this whole process and this journey proved to you yourself?
No, yeah, I haven't really had time to reflect because it's been nonstop. But if you asked me at the beginning of the season if the season would have gone like this, I honestly wouldn't have. I wouldn't have said it would have gone like this for me as an individual. Hard work and patience always rewards. And one of the biggest lessons I learned is be ready always, no matter what. Like, just always stay ready because you never know when the opportunity is going to come. It could come. I went from not playing to starting against Santa Cruz. So, you never know what's going to come. So you always got to be mentally and physically prepared for when that time comes. And that's the biggest takeaway that I'll give you. I think my foundation for my role this year was defense, just bringing energy for the team, picking the guys up full court, just being that energy guy in defense. And I think from that, other situations grew. And some nights I was needed to score, and that was cool, get more shots. Some nights I was more of a slasher and just kind of picking up on D and being an energy guy. But I think the foundation is defense, and everything kind of grew from that. I think just my passion for defense kind of started in college. Like in college, I was Pac-12 All-Defense, and from there it kind of grew. And I think to have it every night is a different mindset. You need to just look at it as this is going to help the team win. This is going to make the best player be tired. It's going to limit his shots and his scoring, which is going to help the team. And I think on a night-to-night basis, although many people on the outside don't notice, people who are within basketball notice. And I think it's honestly an honor to be able to guard the best player. It's an attribute to your effort and your defensive prowess. So.
Defense was a huge part, but there were plenty of nights where you were the leading scorer for the team. Seeing the work you put in on the offensive end, just take me to maybe times even outside of practice and the work you were doing on your offense.
I mean, the guys know and the coaches know that I put my time in, and I think that I was talking to some of the guys about Sean. Sean was one of the guys, my go-to guys in terms of getting my offensive work in. I call Sean at 11 p.m. and he'd be there and drop everything and come work me out with Ant as well. And I think that helped me tremendously just with confidence and being able to do certain things on the floor. And so I attribute that to the coaching staff putting confidence in me and working with me throughout the year, and also my teammates because they instilled confidence as well. I mean, it was one day Joel was like, yo, we had a practice. It was a harder practice, and I had a good practice, and Joe was like, yo, you need to do that every game, bro. You need to play with confidence, do this. And small things like that really stick with me. People don't realize it, but things like that help me, and confidence grew throughout the season.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Game Plan Series. As usual, I'm your host, Anthony Smalls. We'd like to welcome to a special edition as we partner with Sneakers to Scrubs. This is a movement out of Chicago. Former athletes, collegiate and professional. We have Mr. Marcus Allen, who played for the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'm a basketball fan, so I remember seeing him definitely when it was some scrub minutes. I'm just joking. He got some decent minutes when it's time to play. So he's going to give you his game plan on how he managed to keep his curriculum together while he was in college and was still able to play at a high collegiate level and transition to the pros and now into science and medicine. So Mr. Marcus Allen, please take it away. The floor is yours. Feel free to share any presentations that you want, and we'll hold questions for the end of your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Anthony. I really appreciate that. And I just want to reiterate, it's truly an honor to be here speaking today. So I appreciate you having me. I have a short agenda, and I'm just going to start with a background on myself. So my name is Marcus Allen. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. Just in terms of my family life, I have a twin brother who also played professional basketball and collegiate basketball. He actually played at Stanford with me at the same time. He's now a second-year law student at George Washington. Then my parents, they're huge role models for me. They really taught me the importance of education at a young age, and I'm very grateful for that. They always said that it's something that no one can take away from you, and that stuck with me. Like in sports, you can have your knees can give out, you can have an injury, you can't control where you play, but academics is something you can control no matter what. So that stuck with me. And they also told me that, sports aren't forever. The ball stops bouncing at some point. My mom was the first Black gymnast at Stanford, and my dad played college football at Vanderbilt. So they knew that, sports aren't forever. And they really instilled that in me at a very young age. And I kind of took that, and it gave me a larger perspective about life. So I appreciate that. So yeah, just like kind of what I'm doing now. As some of you already know, I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine, and I'm also a co-founder and president of Sneakers to Scrubs. It's basically a nonprofit that myself and some of my classmates started. I'm going to elaborate more on that later. Some of the other roles I have, just besides Sneakers to Scrubs and being a med student, I'm also the education and outreach coordinator for the Southside Free Clinic. This is a clinic in the South Side of Chicago that basically serves those who are uninsured or don't have access to care. We do things like blood pressure screenings, blood glucose screenings, well checks, sick checks, sports physicals, just trying to give care to those who need it most. So that's something I do on the side as well. I'm also involved in the orthopedic surgery interest group. A lot of athletes get the label of wanting to go into orthopedics. But for me, it was my intro into medicine. So I figured, why not get involved and try it? So this has been a great way to, meet different attendings, meet different medical students, be involved in different sawbones clinics, and really learn what orthopedics is about. So I'm the social events coordinator. So I set up a lot of these social events in the Chicago area. I'm also a volunteer liaison for SNMA, the Student National Medical Association, supporting underrepresented medical students. And two more small things I do. So I moved to Chicago from LA after working in LA. And in LA, I was a part of the UCLA Next Gen Advisory Board for the Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital. So basically just trying to destigmatize mental health issues and, trying to make mental health access more accessible, right? And I think that was a cool thing because I got to involve sports, right? A lot of sports is mental, a lot of it. So I really had that connection with that. And I'm also an H-Prep mentor, just mentoring a minority high school students in medicine. So now I'm going to kind of give just kind of like a background, from when I was young up until now of just different things I did to kind of get to this point, for lack of a better term, like a game plan of what I did. It's not perfect, but along the way I learned some things that work for me that help work for somebody else. So as a child, I really explored everything, and I think that this is the model we take for Sneakers to Scrubs as well, right? We have our different phases, and it's really important when you're young to really be exposed to different things to know what's possible. So for me, I explored every sport, not every, but a lot of sports. I played basketball, I played football, I did track, I did gymnastics, I did soccer. And I think even though I didn't stick with all those sports taught me different things about teamwork. They taught me about, the different skills were translatable, right? In gymnastics, which is something I definitely grew out of height-wise, was something that was, it taught me body awareness. Soccer taught me footwork. So I tried a bunch of different sports. I ended up on love with basketball because I was the biggest Kobe Bryant fan probably there is. I had birthday parties dedicated to Kobe Bryant with large blow-ups of Kobe Bryant on the wall. Every pair of Adidas shoes he had. My twin brother and I would be in the backyard. I was Shaq because I was bigger and he was Kobe, and we just kind of replay things that happened in the game. We just watched on TV with our dad, right? So that got me into basketball for sure. But then academically, in my household, academics was always first and foremost. So I really explored my academic passions. I was a math Olympiad. I did every spelling bee. I was in creative writing classes. I was doing extra stuff outside of school. And I think that was big because it allowed me to find my academic identity per se early on. I think a lot of times it's not talked about enough. I think trying to set the foundation for academic success starts when you're at that young age. Whether it's study habits, whether it's classroom etiquette, figuring out those things at a young age help you as you progress through. Because I mean, even through high school, college, medical school, like 20th grade, right? Like I'm still using the things I learned at that stage. And just like small stuff like preparing to take classes when you're in 8th grade that you need in 9th grade to look good to colleges and to make you a successful like STEM candidate for when you go on to medical school, right? I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later as well. But just different exposure to different careers as well. I'm lucky to have my parents. I saw my parents who exposed me to different careers, whether it's medicine, law, business, finance, entertainment, So just seeing that these different things are possible at that young age as well, I think really helped me realize that, as a young Black man, I can do this, it's possible. So I think that was kind of up until 8th grade. And yeah, going into high school, I think high school is when it gets a little more serious. Things matter a little more in high school. So in high school, I focused on academics and athletics, and volunteering. I was pretty focused in high school. Looking back, I haven't reflected on my high school experience in a while, so this is good to get me thinking back to high school. But yeah, I like my advice would be, and like what I did. So I took classes that were challenging, that prepared me for college, right? So different AP classes that were helpful in preparing me. And there's small things like you need to take geometry as a freshman, right? So we're doing research now at Sneakers to Scrubs. Like if you don't take geometry as a freshman, it makes it a lot harder to get into STEM fields like medicine because you won't take calculus as a senior, right? So small things like that, making sure I was taking geometry as a freshman, taking different classes that were challenging, but I was interested. I was actually interested in. I would say also being intentional about studying for the PSAT and SAT. Those are things that I'm learning now that a lot of young Black men in Chicago even don't know exist. So I think making sure these exams are on their radar because these are hugely important to get into college, and they can open up doors, that you might not know are possible, right? So for that, I would say seek out resources and assistance early, whether it's finding a Kaplan book, finding like a mentor or somebody who's actually in college, who went through it, who's willing to mentor you through that studying process. Because a lot of times these tests aren't about your knowledge base, it's about learning the test. Like, do you know how to take a test under time constraints that ask you questions that aren't necessarily like normal questions per se, right? So I think learning the test is hugely important. I would say take a lot of practice exams, get comfortable taking these exams because they're long exams and they aren't necessarily fun. So I think that's hugely important. And what student athletes don't realize is like when I was getting recruited, coaches would like give me a better chance because they knew my academic piece was already under control, whether it was SAT, PSAT. So like it wasn't something that I had to work on. It was like, okay, we can just recruit this guy for basketball. His other metrics meet the standard, right? So I think that was helpful, and I think it opened doors for you athletically as well. And I would say, basketball is pretty straightforward, or sports. In high school, you need to work hard. I played high school ball, AAU ball, and I worked out at a place called Impact Basketball Academy with pros when I was pretty young. So it kind of set the foundation for me basketball wise. I put on an AU team out in California called Compton Magic. So out of Vegas, I was every other weekend I was driving down to California to play ball. So learning how to do time management with school and all that at the same time was pretty big for me at that young age. I was given the keys to my high school gym. So before school and after school, I was getting extra shots up. So I think it's all what you make of it, right? It's being self-motivated, and trying to balance academic and athletics at the same time, something that was very integral in my early, I guess, career. And yeah, and like that eventually led to like I was the top 100 player in the country, Gatorade Player of the Year, Parade All-American. But like, I think all that's great, but like I always harp back to the academics because, that piece was always most important, no matter like how successful I was athletically, right? And the last few things I would say for high school is just for like any student athlete to like want to leverage athletics to create academic opportunities. I would say, be proactive in your recruitment. Like my freshman year, I made a package of my academic profile and my athletic profile, and I sent out the schools that I wanted to go to. Like in ninth grade, I wasn't getting recruited. I'm like, okay, I want to go to a good academic school that prepares me for life after sports. So I sent it to a whole bunch of schools. I made a list and just like no warning or anything. I just sent this out to people, just, to being proactive. And I was surprised the amount of people who responded. So I would say, if you're in that situation, be proactive. Like, your biggest proponent is yourself. So, make that profile, send it out, and, kind of make it happen for yourself is something that I would largely recommend. And then in high school, I was very involved in the community. I've always had a passion for trying to shrink that educational gap between, those who don't have as many resources. So, like, in high school, my brother and I started a program called Power of Words, um, basically teaching young underserved students about, syntax, diction, how to break down a word using Greek and Latin roots. So I think the point of that is just to find something you're passionate about in the community or volunteering and stick with it. Like, there's so many things you can do. On top of that, I'm also a coach for Special Olympics still. I still do that. So I did that since I was like around ninth grade. I've been coaching like the same guys in Special Olympics. So, like, it's just do things that are fun to you, and you're passionate about. And I think that's something that I would recommend, because, like, not only is it fun, but, like, it's something you can talk about in an interview or different things like that. It's not just something that you're doing. It comes back to help you, and it teaches you skills that are helpful, like in like your work career, your school career. So I think that was largely impactful for me as well. Um, so now College. Anthony mentioned a little bit about it already, but I played basketball at Stanford University under scholarship. I was Pac-12 All-Defensive Team, Pac-12 All-Academic team a few times. Won the NIT, Sweet 16 run. And then I majored in psychology with a focus in health and development. And the way I got to that, the major was kind of interesting, because Stanford doesn't make you declare a major until your sophomore year. So I got time to try literally everything. I tried a bunch of different classes, different majors. I went with open mind, right? So I didn't know I wanted to do medicine at that point. I just was like, okay, let's see what piques my interest. So I picked psychology because it was one thing that applied to my like day-to-day life. Like, I can always work on myself. And I think too, it has a wide range of things it applies to. So I picked that. I started to engage in psychology research at Stanford. I did a lot of implicit bias research. So I think just my experience in undergrad was very much exploring like what I want to do and what I'm interested in. And I'm grateful that I took that route. And I think that what I want to highlight with this is that when you're deciding on a major going into college, I want people to know you don't need to major in pre-med or major in hum bio or major in chemistry to be a physician. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did a post-bac, which I'm gonna talk about later on, but like you can major in, I have friends who majored in theater, but took all their pre-med prerequisites and did amazing, and took the MCAT and did great. And they're in med school as well, or they're physicians, right? So I would say, this is my opinion, but like, go in and find what you really like are passionate about. And if you want to be a physician, take those classes, the prereqs, but don't necessarily pigeonhole yourself without trying things, because college has so many opportunities. You're going to interact with different students, different professors who are the top of their class, top of their field. I don't go in as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old student and have your mind too set or too locked in, because you can still be a physician and major in honestly anything. So that's one thing I want to just make sure I get out there. And in terms of picking the right fit, picking the right school, I think there's so many things you need to look at, especially trying to balance academic and athletics, right? You're trying to balance these two things, and it's hard. So making sure that academics are at first and foremost, right? Making sure they have the classes that you need, right? Like, I need to take these classes, or there's this academic support that is there for me so I can be successful, right? Athletics, it's important as well, like finding the right fit. Someone can go into school and they can be the best player, but if you don't fit into the system, you aren't going to play. And that's something you need to know as an 18-year-old kid. Like, if the coach is getting, I remember at Stanford, the coach was getting millions of dollars a year. Like, he's not going to sacrifice his job for someone who doesn't fit in the system. It's nothing personal. That's just the way it is. So I think finding somewhere where like you fit in the system, the coaches believe in you, you're gonna play, but also not sacrificing that academic piece, which should always be, in my opinion, first. I think financial is important too. Like, are they paying for your education? Are they paying for your room and board? Like, is it a full scholarship? Like, that's definitely a big piece for me. Location is pretty straightforward. Um, do you enjoy the area that you're going to be studying, right? You're going to be there for 4 years at minimum. And nowadays it's normally 5 years, right? So trying to make sure you enjoy where you are, making sure to support college, being a collegiate athlete is not easy. So making sure you have support system is hugely important. Like there are going to be dark days where like you're tired, you didn't play well this game, or you didn't do well on the exam this day, or you're having problems with your relationships. Having that support is hugely important, and that's even past college. So making sure you have a support system where you are, whether it's friends, family, whatever it may be, I think that's hugely important. And then before you decide on a school, I would say talk to current and former student athletes and students. Like for me, it's just trying to understand the vibes. Like, is this somewhere I can be successful? And the only way you know that is you talk to people who are going through it at the same time. And of course, take visits and do that. Try to do it in person because that makes it a lot easier to actually assess the situation. So skills that I learned in basketball that really translated to medicine thus far. I can't speak for residency. I can't speak for like actually being in a position, but I think in terms of my first year of medical school, there are so many skills that translated over from basketball, my college experience that were integral in like my success as a first year medical student. The first thing I'll say is time management. Hugely important. And I think that I took it for granted how important it was, to be honest. Like looking back at my college days, like it'll be like wake up at 5:30, have weights for 2 hours, go to training table, have class all day, go to practice, have practice for like probably 4 hours, then have an hour of recovery, like ice bath, like different like cupping, massage stuff, like trying to get your body right, make sure you feel good. And then after that, I have to study, right? So, trying to figure out how to make everything work and still be efficient and effective throughout this whole day. Um, and now when I fast forward to med school, days are busy too. I have class, I have clinical responsibilities, I have research, I have extracurriculars in the community. I think that it's the it was a natural transition for me to be able to do all these things kind of at once because I did it in college, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people are going to realize, like, um, it kind of implicitly prepares you for these next situations as a medical student. And I'm grateful that I had that experience. Even though it was tough, I'm grateful I had that experience. And I would say, teamwork is pretty obvious. Like I didn't realize how much of a team sport medicine was until I started shadowing physicians, and like everyone's like literally like on the same page, like on a string almost. And I feel like um, even as a med student, like a lot of our stuff is like in groups. Like we have small group assignments. We have small group after every lecture. We have, anatomy small group tables. We're all dissecting and working together. So I think that being able to work on a team is hugely important. As a first year medical student, I'm sure the next 3 years is going to be important as well. So I think that's an advantage. I think, grit. Med school's not easy. There's some nights you need to be up all night, right? Or you need to, go to this volunteer event and then come back and study for an exam that's the next day. So I think having that grit that you kind of get from, working through practice and all the travel, and all the things that come with sports, I think that helps. It makes some of the things that are deemed tougher a little bit easier for you because you kind of lived it already. Communication as well. To be a good physician, like I'm noticing now, just from like the outside, from shadowing and stuff like that, that communication is hugely important because if you don't, the patients could be at risk. Like because it can be small stuff like a small dosage or like an incorrect prescription. Like all that stuff matters. Like communicating clearly and concisely. You do that in sports every day on the court. So, and then the last thing is discipline, right? That's to everything. That applies to absolutely everything. But I think that those things are like some of like the few things that I noticed just in my first year that have been hugely important just in my success as a first year medical student. So, fast forwarding to the end of my college career. So like, how did I become interested in medicine? So my junior year of college was when I kind of thought about, okay, medicine could be something for me. So I have a twin brother who played basketball at Stanford as well. But he had a lot more injuries than I did. He broke both of his wrists at different points. He had a Jones fracture in his foot. So he spent a lot of time with the team positions at Stanford. And like, I was always with my brother. So that means I was always with the team position as well, right? So I spent a lot of time in the training room or in the orthopedic clinic with my brother. And like, that was when I'm like, okay, this seems pretty cool. I was like asking him questions about treatment, asking about surgical techniques, like how are you going to get to the scaffold bone here, like just stuff that like I'll read online because I care about my brother. And it ended up kind of piquing my interest. I'm like, okay, I can maybe try to engage in this and take a closer look. And that was kind of the start. And then later that year, I ended up taking a class, an elective at the medical school at Stanford called medical ethics, just to see if like the environment and like this a topic of like medicine like was really like something that I was kind of interested in and like want to pursue, right? So I think that after that class, I realized like, okay, this is a really cool thing. But at the same time, it was something like I knew it was my junior year. I didn't take any prerequisite classes, like the chemistries, the bios, the organic chems, the biochemistry. I didn't take any of that or physics. And I also knew that I wanted to play pro ball. So at that point, I pretty much knew I was going to play professional basketball somewhere. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna put it on the back burner and see if it comes back at this point, because it was too late to get my classes in. Because like once you finish college, like my last game of my college career, I started pre-draft training, and I was in Dallas every weekend, getting ready for like the draft and work out to different teams. So like it got busy, so like I couldn't do it at that point. But yeah, like that was when I started becoming interested in medicine. It was kind of like honestly happenstance, but I'm really happy. I'm not happy my brother got hurt, but I'm happy that it ended up in this trajectory. And this is a fast forward to pro ball now. So I finished college. I ended up playing 4 to 5 years of professional basketball after college. My first year was in Finland. I played for a team called Karhu Basket in Finland, and it was a great experience. Honestly, I learned a different culture. Um, you know, Everyone spoke a different language. The fans were great. There were fireworks in the gym. And it was cool to be in that environment, just to learn from different culture. Um, kind of when I could, right? So I came back to the States after that first year, and I ended up playing the next 3 to 4 years of the South Bay Lakers and Los Angeles Lakers. That was a great experience because it taught me what it took to be a pro. When you're around guys who like are like at the top of their craft, like the LeBrons, Rondos, and Anthony Davis, like you realize how good people really are and how serious they take their taking care of their bodies, their skill set, and I mean literally everything. So I think that really taught me how to be professional from taking care of my body, being the first one there, last one to leave, um, you know, attention to detail, film study, and all that. So I think that was really a really good experience, and also handling pressure too. Like when you're playing in LA, anywhere honestly, like there is an added pressure. A bad game is really a bad game because the fans care. So I think that taught me how to handle pressure, and be calm and collected in a lot of different situations. Um, and also, funny enough, so after this is when my interest in medicine kind of came back, right? So like Dr. Jones is the head orthopedic doctor for the Lakers, and Dr. Dufont's the head like primary care doc for the Lakers. And I ended up like going to UCLA Health, getting physicals, and after a while, like I started to like ask them questions, like, yeah, so how is it doing X, Y, and Z, like giving physicals or taking care of like guys who like have like whose bodies are worth like millions of dollars, right? And like just asking questions like that. And I think that was when like the second time it came back around, I'm like, okay, like medicine might be something for me in the future. So it kind of reconfirmed along the way. Like, I'm okay, it's still there. And I was like my third or fourth year. So, um, and yeah, and I think that going back to, sports, like I think also like being a pro athlete really taught me that sports aren't permanent. As a college kid, I'm thinking, okay, I can play sports forever, you know, like till I'm 35. But like once you become a pro, it really made me realize that like it's so important to have other interests and other things that you can, not fall back on, but can pivot to. like, because overseas and in the NBA and the G League, I learned it's a business, and it's always next man up. I mean, every day. I mean, there's always somebody coming in who's better than you, stronger than you, faster than you. That's just the way it is, you know. And like, that's something I learned. Like your job is never safe. Like every day when I was going to the facility, I was thinking like I'm fighting for my life to stay here, and because everyone's good, and that's not a bad thing, but like it made me realize like it's something that you can't do forever, and also like injuries. I had 2 knee surgeries, right? And those are things where like it wasn't an acute injury, it was chronic. So like I can't control any of this. So like and like those setbacks, you miss a contract here or there because you had a knee surgery. It's like there's things you can't control. And I think being a pro, you realize that like, okay, the importance of taking basketball seriously, but also having different avenues that I can take. And like at this point was when I started taking classes during the summer and during my season, because what most people don't realize is as a professional basketball player, you have a lot more time than you think. Because the human body physically, you can't work out all day. So like I would be done at like 1 or 2 or even noon some days, right? With practice. And I'd have the rest of the day to do whatever. So at one point it kind of clicked. I'm like, why not just like teach myself something? So I started taking free classes online. I started with like real estate, and then it went to like therapy, and then eventually, like when I towards the end of my year, like during the year, I took a class through ASU. So the NBA had a program called the Game Plan Series, like unironically enough, right, where like basically they let you take it's professional development opportunities through the NBA, right? So they teach you what's out there. So basically, they give you free access to classes at ASU. So I took my first post-bac class per se through that program, the game plan program at ASU online. So I took biology, and like that was my first like Marcus, like are you still capable of like going to school? And 2, can you get through like scientific coursework, right? Because it's been 5-6 years at that point. So I'm like, okay, like am I still capable of like learning this stuff? So like after that class, I kind of gained confidence. I'm like, okay, I can do this science stuff, and I actually enjoy it. So I think that was a big turning point for me when I realized it's possible. And the moral of that story is, so I took 6 gap years, all with playing sports, and I would say it's never too late to do not just medicine, anything you want to do. To pivot, to switch directions. It's just you can't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. You just can't. It's hard to like for me. Like I got so used to playing basketball, collecting a check here and there, going to shoot around, going to practice. But I think it's hard to get out of your comfort zone, but I think it's very great. It's great because you don't know what's on the other side until you do it. So that's one thing I would really want to emphasize, kind of through that experience. Yeah. So now I want to talk about my transition to medicine. So I retired, and it's like kind of like anyone would experience. It's like, who am I without sports? I played since I was 7 years old. It was a big part of my life. So like I think a big part of the first part of retiring was trying to figure out who Marcus was again, right? Without sports, I was trying to figure out my identity a little bit. But what I always leaned back into was how to translate the skills, right? So like that competitiveness, I just translated it to like competing with myself in the classroom. Can I do the best I possibly can on this exam? Can I do this to the best of my ability, right? And just different things like I mentioned earlier, right? Like teamwork, communication. I tried to really draw that parallel because you it's kind of a void without sports, but I think you can always replace it in other careers if you channel that energy correctly. So that kind of helped me get through that phase of like, who am I without sports? Because I realized the similarities between the two things, and I think that helped. Um, so like I mentioned earlier, I took the post-bac route. Um, so basically I didn't do my pre-med prerequisites as an undergrad at Stanford. I basically did them after. So like I mentioned earlier, I started my post-bac career before I retired with the ASU game plan series. And then I took some more classes at a school called MHC. I'm a community college online kind of during my career as well, towards the tail end of my career. But eventually I transitioned to a full-time post-bac program through USC, on the University of Southern California. So, they have a pre-med post-bac program. It was the same thing, but basically it was more of like a formal program where like they had structure. You're taking these classes these days. It's in person. They have different clinical exposure opportunities. They have a lot of different, just different infrastructure to help you get to med school. So I did that for a year, graduated from that program. And yeah, and I think that this is just like a little insight from my experience. I think that both pathways, undergrad versus post-bac, are great. But for me, I think the post-bac was great because it was the first time in my academic career where I got to solely focus on academics. Like for me, it was always like, okay, balancing sports and academics, which is great. It's great to have the skills, but it made me realize how much time I have if I don't have sports. So I was, for the first time, going to office hours every day, forming these close relationships with my teachers, professors, TAs, different people in the school. I was, going to optional study sessions. And I think that really like opened my eyes to like, wow, like I could really like immerse myself in these opportunities and academic opportunities with this time. And I think my performance not only reflected that, but I think that my letters of recommendation and my overall opportunities were like way better because I was so involved academically. So I'm so grateful for a post-bac experience to give me that like second chance of like just being a student for the first time ever, which was really nice. And then also along this journey to medicine, of course, there's the MCAT. That's like the big test that's often in the way of, getting into med school. I think as somebody who was coming out of sports, I think I applied sports to my studying for that as well. It was a schedule, very regimented. I'm gonna get through content review this day. I'm gonna get through practice test this day. I'm gonna get through this subject that day. So I would say for that, just create a schedule and stick with it. And I think on top of that, it's important to take a lot of practice exams because the exam is like 7-8 hours long. So it's getting used to sitting for that long is a challenge. So take as many practice exams you can take just so you're comfortable in that situation. But like I said, like if the MCAT's all about structure, and I think as student athletes, structure is your life. So I think drawing that parallel there will really help you in preparation for the MCAT. And the last thing I did during that year was a clinical experience. So nowadays, getting into med school is clinical experience is like largely important because they want to see that you're like committed to the field and like have actually tried stuff within the field. Because medicine isn't all glitz and glam, so they want to know that you've seen different aspects of the career field before applying to med school. So I was basically a COPE Health Scholar. It's basically a volunteer CNA, a certified nursing assistant. So basically, I was bedside. I was answering call lights, taking vitals, feeding patients, doing stuff that was just helping the nursing staff and the physicians, take the load off a little bit. Some of the stuff that didn't require much, but I think that really exposed me to like what the hospital workings were like. It gave me insight into, necessarily like how the hospital system works. Otherwise, I just didn't know. So I think that was hugely important in me, kind of growing in my medical like journey towards medicine. Yeah, and then on top of that, after I experienced all this stuff there, the application cycle was important as well. Like applying is a long process in medicine. There are 3 different steps. I think the personal statement is hugely important. It's basically like your essay that goes out to all the schools. All I would say for that is just make sure that people are reading it, not just you, because whether it's your family, friends, advisors, have other people read that to make sure it's as perfect as it can possibly be, because that's your initial introduction to all these schools. So that's my first piece of advice there. And then after that goes out, secondary applications go out, which are like the secondaries, right? So you basically write to each individual school, and for these different essays, it's important to really cater to the school and to see how you can like add to the school and what that school can kind of, offer during your education, right? So I think that for the same thing for these, have people read those over and over again, and make sure those are as clean as possible. The last thing is preparing for interviews. Like this is pretty controversial in this space, but for me, I like to go in prepared. So I made a document for all my interviews, like common questions that are asked, and I think that that helped me be comfortable in these spaces during the interviews. I kind of knew my old experiences, so I can bring them up pretty quickly. So in terms of medical school, I already touched on like how to translate it from sports, but just like learning how to study was the biggest thing going into medical school. I remember my first week of school, we did anatomy first, and I remember the first day of class, it was like we had 3 lectures and about 500 slides of material to learn within like honestly that night. And I was like, is this possible? Like, is this normal? Like, I didn't know what was normal at that point. So learning how to study, learning how to condense information down to like what needs to be synthesized and what doesn't need to be synthesized is hugely important. And that skill, I'm still learning that skill, to be honest. I've gotten better at it, but I'm still learning that skill. But that's the big thing about medical school. And I would mention extracurriculars as well. It's a fine balance. You can have as many things you do outside of medicine as you want, but you can't let it sacrifice your academic performance in medical school. So finding that balance between, okay, I'm involved in these different things outside of school, but I can also succeed in school is a big piece of what you need to do as a medical student as well, because there are a lot of opportunities to get involved in the community. And I'll say school life balance, like going back to time management, I'm gonna harp on that a bunch. Like understanding that, you are a med student, but you also need to have like family life still, have friends. So like understanding that time management piece is always going to be there throughout your life, right? Time management is going to be consistent, even I'm sure past medical school for me. So I think that's hugely important. I would say seek mentorship and upperclassmen guidance. This process is something it's not black and white all the time, but I think if you really lean on people who've done it before you, I think that can really help you in your journey along the way. Because for me coming into medicine, a lot of stuff was like not clear, because a lot of the stuff I didn't understand the application process. I didn't understand how to study. I didn't understand like what Anki was, like different resources were. So I think really reaching out to people who've done it before you makes your life easier, and there'll be less hiccups along the way if you reach out earlier in your process. Highly recommend that. And then for me, like this is one more fun thing. I try staying involved in sports when I can, especially basketball. That's my way to like decompress. So like through Sneakers to Scrubs, like myself and some of the other co-founders go to different high schools and play ball with some of the high school students, middle school students. So that keeps me active and like around sports. So I think that really is besides giving back, I think it gives back to me as well. It fills my cup because after a long week of studying or in the clinic, I think it's a privilege to go and play ball with a lot of these kids in the community, and just kind of forget about all the stuff I have to do. So I think that's a big thing, like staying involved in things that make you that kind of fill your cup and make you happy. So, and the last thing I want to talk about is Sneakers to Scrubs. So myself and I would say like 4 or 5 of my classmates started a nonprofit called Sneakers to Scrubs. Basically, it's a nonprofit with the goal of increasing the representation of Black men in medicine via sports. And so like how do we come to this idea, right? I feel like we all realize that ourselves included, like sports is where we met a lot of our best friends, and like a lot of times it's like young Black men, whether it's basketball or football. A lot of young Black men are in these spaces naturally. So we figure why not bring these opportunities and awareness in these spaces they're already comfortable, right? It kind of just seemed like common sense at the time. So, and like what we noticed is like they're more receptive to what we're like talking about outside of basketball, whether it's medicine, financial literacy, violence prevention. They're more receptive because there's a point of connection. They see us as counterparts. They want to play college basketball, want to play pro basketball, and they see us coming and talking about not only that, but also medicine and different things and just different things in general. and they're more inclined to listen and try things than otherwise. And I kind of appreciated the model because it creates a real close family like network. So in terms of the mission, I'm gonna just like read the mission real quick, just in terms of like to combat the generational decline of Black men in medicine by exposing middle school and high school student athletes to healthcare careers. And we do that through partnerships with different athletic departments, different high schools, middle schools, and then supporting Black males through the educational pipeline in the healthcare professions by providing mentorship, guidance, hands-on experience. So our model is basically we intervene early through sports, and we get them into different pipeline programs that myself and my board members are on the boards of those as well, right? So we on the boards of like an H prep, and we have our student athletes go to these pipeline programs, and they get hands-on, basically education about medicine, about different disease processes, and this is a nice introduction to a lot of our student athletes. And the last thing is to create a network of different physicians, attendings, student athletes, pre-meds, medical students, all with the same, kind of similar interests, whether it's, in medicine and sports, and bringing them together. So, it makes it easier for people to ask questions and, lean on people who can help them throughout this process. That's not always a straight line, right? So having that network is hugely important. We're trying to create that through the Sneakers to Scrubs movement, across the country. So that's a big thing we're trying to do. And this in terms of our model, it's really based on middle school, which is the explore phase, high school, the experience phase, and Excel, the post-bac or pre-med phase. We're trying to hit every aspect along the spectrum. And I just want to give one last example of like the work we've done just this past year. We partnered with a school called UCW, University of Chicago Woodlawn Charter. It's in Woodlawn, south side of Chicago. We partnered with their basketball team. And we ended up, playing ball with them, talking to them, and like forming relationships with the players. And after about a month, we got 10 of the players enrolled in H-Prep, which is a 6-week enrichment program, teaching students about medicine and different opportunities within medicine. And it was great to see like our student athletes involved in, suturing or dissecting pig hearts or, learning about different disease processes. So like getting them away from the court into this space was amazing. I think we had 10 Black men was the most in Chicago history for the program. So yeah, I think opportunities like that. And, a lot of the student athletes after this program are taking opportunities to be EMTs or looking into different healthcare career paths because of this programming. So like that is some of the stuff that like we love to see, and just helping student athletes academically through this process. So yeah, I mean, that's all I have for now. Are there any questions or comments?
First, we want to say thank you so much for sharing. You have a lot of great, rich detail, and not just your sports, but also how you managed to leverage your connections within the LA facilities, asking people for help, knowing that even though you were playing with some of the best in the NBA, that it's not guaranteed. Definitely with the injuries and stuff. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing. If anybody would like to come off mute and ask a question, please feel free to do that now.
Well, you knew I was going to have a question or two. So I appreciated the conversation. I came in a little late, but I was listening on my cell phone, just moving around a lot. So athletically, I share the same value system in sports as you do. I played on the East Coast for the most part, did pretty well as well. Did your injuries happen in college or post-college while you were playing professionally?
Yeah, so I had 2 knee surgeries. One was actually in high school. And my other one was as a pro. It happened after my first year overseas. I had 2 loose bodies in my knee. And my knee would like lock up when I was running. And when you're overseas, they don't make sure you get out there. So I got MRIs, and they're like, you can play through this, and they didn't want to break my contract. They're like, you need to play, or like, we aren't going to pay you.
Right.
So I ended up having to like call my parents back home and get a doctor in the United States to read my imaging to get me out of the contract. So like it's a big business, and a lot of times they want you out there just playing. But yeah, like that really taught me the importance of, I need to be more serious about just my other opportunities in life, because, this is not something I can do forever. So
I too sit in a mentor seat at the program that I help run, and finding paths and conversations to have these kids understand what it does take to become an athlete, student athlete, professional athlete, collegiate athlete. It's different for each and every kid. So you wind up trying to curtail a resume of conversation for each kid to follow and to try and adjust. And you have a very strong background. Where did it come from? Did it come from parental or mentorship?
I would say, for me, I would say my parents. And I'll say later on in my career, I'll say more mentorship, but like my parents set the foundation for sure. My parents are both like, my mom was a gymnast at Stanford. My dad played football at Vanderbilt, and they're both physicians now. So like it just kind of was in my family. Like funny enough, growing up, I didn't want to be a doctor because I didn't want to do what my parents did. I was trying to like fight it as long as possible. But I think just in terms of like the intangibles, like, the hard work, I saw it on a day-to-day basis. I saw discipline at home. And I think that, and like my parents told me, like my mom tore ACL before the Olympics, so she couldn't do the Olympics. And my dad tore his ACL his junior year before he could get an opportunity to play in the NFL. So they told me about all the stuff that was possible beforehand, but it didn't hit me until like I was actually in it. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. So like, it's always hard to go back to your parents and be like, yeah, you were right. But
That's true.
yeah,
You have a
were,
twin.
I do.
Is your twin a doctor as well in the healthcare field, or is he off kilter in his own little world?
He's actually in his second year of law school right now. So he's going. His goal is to be he wants to get into sports and entertainment law and like be like an athletic director or something like that. But he's like in law school. So he's
law school is he at?
George Washington in DC. Yeah. So he's the oddball of the family right now. So yeah.
So I have a question. When you talk to the youth and they're saying, oh, I want to be an NBA player like you, and they come from broken homes, it's not a nice way to say it, but their hopes and dreams, because not even with them, but it's also their parents. Oh, my grandson or my son plays well and he's going to be this. How do you talk to them about the importance of school? Because the kids that Coach Hargraves and I work with are from either the shelters in different places, and some of the high school students can't even spell the street that they live on or know their zip code and stuff. So it's really, the basketball, it relieves the tension and gives them the hope, but then how do we implement the education so they would understand, other than, like having you come and talk to them? Kids listen to your age group and your NBA, like, oh, wow, but it's like, if it's coming from an adult, it's like, oh God, so how did you deal with that?
No, I think that's a great question. I think that, like you mentioned it well, I think one of the like advantages is that like they've seen me play, so it's kind of like a validation, so they'll listen. But I think just in terms of just like reaching, like what worked for us is like what I've realized, because like working in the South Side of Chicago, like where students are honestly like 4 or 5 years behind grade level in reading, math, great, like just understanding like what medicine is, and not only that, but also understanding that, like trying to make it, for lack of better terms, like a sexy career, because like a lot of kids see entertainers in basketball and think it's like, okay, that's like a glamorous career. But I think trying to make education as desirable to student athletes is something that we're like still working on and trying to figure out. It's very hard, but I think we've had candid conversations where we have a slide deck where we put like, these are the amount of people who make it to Division I college basketball.
Okay.
These are the amount of people who make it to NBA. And we have the stats, because then they can see it. And then on top of that, we show them like the possibilities outside of medicine, right? So we have a slideshow be like, do you know how what this doctor does? Like, so like say the team doctor for the Detroit Pistons. They're involved in sports still. You get to be around it. And then we bring up like, I hate doing this part, but a lot of the kids are like really into like compensation and getting paid. They like are like into, so like we tell them like this NBA player makes this much money in 2 years, and this doctor makes this much money in over their whole life because they can work until they just don't feel like it anymore. So just like having tangible examples is huge. And I think, as bad as it sounds, like just trying to be brutally honest, like I think a lot of the times, like so myself and my other co-founder, Jamil, and some other guys, we go into schools and we are already close to the student athletes. So the first thing is forming that relationship, getting close with them, right? Like earning their trust. But at that point, there are times you need to be brutally honest, like, you know, like if you don't take academics seriously, like what's possible, you know? And like the thing is, like, I had it in my family, but like just growing up being like, you want to take care of your family, you want to do X, Y, and Z, and not even just medicine, just taking school seriously, having classroom etiquette, showing up to class, like all those things are like stuff that we find ourselves having to teach our student athletes because they weren't taught that, like I mentioned, like when they were like before 8th grade. So yeah, that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out, and we're actually doing research on that right now, trying to figure out how to not only raise awareness in medicine, but how to like increase the amount of interest, because a lot of the student athletes I was involved with, when they were in these pipeline programs, they were the quickest learners at all the kids in there. Like they learn stuff quickly, but it's just a matter of like being in these spaces and like just like finding ways to get to these spaces and having that initial interest is the hard part. And that's something we're still working on. So like, if you have any advice for us as well, like we love to have some. But I think like just to keep it short again, I think that the relationship is the biggest piece that's helped us. I think that, you know, the kids like us going and playing ball with the kids, like in their neighborhoods, like just going to show up, like in like meeting like moms, grandmas, uncles, aunties, like picking the kids up at late night and dropping them off at home. I think after all those interactions, I think not only the students, but the parents will text me and be like, we trust you. Like, should this young man do this program? I'm like, yeah, they should do it. I think it'll be great. I'm gonna try to get him in X, Y, and Z program. They trust us more. And I think, like, for example, we have a student athlete who's got a scholarship to UCI and wants to go into medicine. And like, we're trying to set up ways he can walk onto the team. So it's like having the relationship there is like the biggest thing. But that can be hard because, like you said, coming from some broken homes, like some student athletes don't want to trust adults, which is like a difficult piece. So it just takes time, I think, honestly.
Do you do videos where, like, if we wanted to show here in New York to some of the kids that we mentor, your videos and how what you went through, you know, basically, or other teammates or other NBA players that you know that would be willing to get in the video and talk and things like that?
You know what, we don't, but I just took a note of that because that's a great idea. So we can definitely like, that's a great idea. So you know, 100%. Yeah, no, I think that's something that we definitely should do because like not just like my co-founders, but like there's so many people with different backgrounds all over the country who've reached out, and I think it'll be great to hear different stories because you know it brings it closer to home.
Yeah, you do it on YouTube. I think that would be an excellent idea and get just different mentors, and not just medicine, even though medicine would be a great thing. Law, your brother does law, you know, entertainment law. You know, there's so many things that is out there for our children that's not being focused on, and you know, and education is one of the things that's not being focused on. You know,
Absolutely.
so a lot of people have their hopes and prayer. My child is going to become the best football player, you know, and they're going to make a lot of money. And like you said the statistics you have of how many people play basketball, how many people make it to the NBA, and the children need to see that. And
Right.
if we have that special talent, you do have like coach or other people that say, you know, he's good. Let me take him to another level or introduce him to somebody, you know, but then there's also where they can become productive gym teachers or basketball coaches for the community, for community centers and stuff. So, you know, you don't want to discourage them, but you also want to encourage them that education is going to be the key to success in things.
Right, right, and that's still true. And like you said, in everything, right? It's something that you can use across platforms. So that's definitely like I'm 100% going to look into that and talk to some of the other guys about getting that underway. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'll be the first one you send a tape to. Just remember that.
Absolutely, I got your name down already. So
This was awesome. I am so proud of you as a person that just met you today. And keep up the good work. I mean, this is really amazing. And congratulations on all you do. I have a niece in Chicago, so I gotta go visit her now.
okay, most definitely. And
So-
I appreciate that.
I
Yep.
wanted to add that Coach Hargraves and Mrs. Barksdale is a part of the legendary Riverside Hawks.
Okay.
So we are hoping that Isaiah, your colleague in New York, that's a part of Sneakers and Scrubs, will be able to partner if needed
And
on
reach
your
out to
behalf.
us.
No,
And
most
it's Miss Barksdale. Don't put me married. I'm a cougar.
I said Mrs. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You said Mrs. No, he is too cute for you to put up there, Mrs.
I'm sorry. I always try to put that respect out there.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions? If not, I see it's past 7 o'clock. I don't want to hold everybody too long, but please, if you have any questions, feel free to come off mute.
Nice to meet you, Marcus, by the
Yeah.
way.
likewise.
Really nice to meet you, Marcus, and thank you for this, man. I really appreciate your time today. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
Well, I put my email in there, so whenever. Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
Okay.
No, thank you.
So with that being said,
appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
thank you, Alex. So with that being said, we will wrap this one up. Thank you so much, Marcus. We look forward to the next session of Game Plan, the special edition of partnership with Sneakers to Scrub. I don't know who you're gonna select to be the next speaker, but we'll work on that and send out the advertisement as well. So thank you all for showing up. We look forward to seeing you at the next session. Have a great night, everyone.